What's up everyone and welcome back to Reload Reacts. My name is Trey and today we are going to look through r/ProRevenge, the subreddit for those who get back at the ones who wrong them, and are usually quite good at it. This post is from Barbecue Lunch. Can't you just unload around me? So this happened earlier today and was way too perfect not to share with you guys. I work in the construction as a foreman for a new house build. The location is kinda strange. The house is 250 feet up a hill via a footpath only. All of our materials have to come up this footpath by hand. It's a pain in the butt to manually carry quite literally an entire house up this hill. One of our saving graces is having the 2 parking spots on the street at the bottom of this hill marked with official no parking signs. Unfortunately, there is an elementary school about half a block away, and the parents of the children seem to regularly, at least twice a day, think it's okay to park in our spots. Now I consider myself a reasonable person, so if someone is parked in the spots and we don't have a delivery or need to park a truck, I will let it go. If we need the spots and there's someone parked there however, I will ask them to move nicely, and most of the time they do immediately. Until today. I get a phone call from the lumber delivery truck that is en route to our location. He says he'll be there in about 2 or 3 minutes. I let him know I'll meet him at the street and make sure he has space to park. He's carrying all of the materials to frame the roof of our house, which is a lot of really big lumber and will easily take an hour to bring up the hill. So naturally, I didn't want him parked in the middle of the street with hazards on for an hour when we have a perfectly good parking spot for him. As I begin my trip down the hill, I notice there is a school parent sitting in her car idling. Assuming she's just waiting to pick up her child. I walk up to her car and politely let her know that she is parked in a no parking zone and we really need her to clear it to park a delivery truck. She scoffs at me and rudely states back, "I'll just be a few minutes and your truck isn't here, take a chill pill dude." Before I can respond, a giant lumber truck comes around the corner and I wave to him. I then gesture towards him to the woman in the car who has now put her window back up to ignore me. I put on my best customer service smile and wave at her through the window. She put it down halfway and angrily shouts, "What?" By now, the truck has pulled up alongside her car and I politely ask her again with a stronger tone of voice to move her vehicle, reminding her that she is illegally parked in a towaway zone. Then she gives me this wonderful idea. She says, "Can't you guys just unload around me? Jesus, it's not that hard." I give her another smile and walk away, a brilliant plan forming in my head. I instruct the delivery driver to park as closely to her as possible and block her in with the porta potty that is at one end of our reserved spots and the parking car that is parked just adjacent to our spots on the other end. He smiles because immediately he gets what I'm trying to do and proceeds to expertly block this lady and her car in a little 2 parking spot jail. We unstrap the lumber and my guys begin humping material up the hill. Meanwhile, I call the police parking enforcement to let them know the situation. At this point in time, I wasn't trying to get her in trouble. I just wanted a record of why we were blocking part of the street so we don't get in trouble with the city. The very friendly traffic officer lets me know that she can be there in about 30 minutes and deal with the situation for me. Wonderful. As we continue to unload lumber, the child of the parent shows up, and wouldn't you know it, Mum is now just realizing that the lumber truck is parked so close she can't get out her driver door to meet her kid. She awkwardly clambers across the inside of her car and stumbles out the passenger door, shoots glaring looks at me and the truck driver in the process. She loads her kid into the back and then begins to realize she has no way of leaving. She comes storming up to myself and the driver and states, "I'm in a big hurry. You need to move your damn truck right now so I can go." Before I can respond, the driver gets a big grin on his face and says, "Ma'am, in order to unload the lumber on the truck we had to unstrap it. And per our company policy, I'm not allowed to move the truck with any unsecured load on it. I'm sorry." This sends her into near aneurysm levels of blood pressure. Meanwhile, I can barely contain my laughter. "F your policy, I have somewhere to be," she barks back at him. At this point, with impeccably convenient timing, the parking enforcement officer shows up and parks behind the truck. She doesn't see the officer arrive, and while the officer is still getting out of her vehicle, I just casually say, "Can't you just pull around it? It's not that hard." With the biggest ass-eating grin I've ever had, I watch as she realizes that I've just used her line on her. "F you," she yells and storms back to her car, angrily clambers back in through the passenger door and in the driver's seat. At this point, the officer is walking up to myself and the driver. Before she can introduce herself, the mum in the car slams it in reverse and stomps on the gas, crashing into our porta potty and knocking it over, and then throws the car on a drive and tries to mount the curb and drive on the sidewalk. The officer, driver, and I are staring in disbelief as she gets halfway over the curb and gets stuck. I can hear her screaming obscenities over the idling truck from inside her car. The officer promptly walks up to the door of the car and orders her out. My favourite part of the entire thing is watching her go to shock as she realizes she just did all of that in front of a police officer. She gets slapped in cuffs as the parking officer calls for a second unit, and she is promptly sat on the very curb she tried to drive over. She sits on the curb yelling to the now two officers about how we told her she could stay there, and that we never asked her to move. The traffic officer responds that she was the one who was originally called when she first refused to move, and that she already knows what's going on. While myself and the driver are giving a report to the second officer, my guys finish removing the remainder of the lumber, and the driver finishes his statement and takes off to go back to the yard. By the end of the ordeal, she was arrested, charged with child endangerment, her kid was in the back of the car the whole time, reckless driving, destruction of property, the porta potty, and driving on a suspended license. On top of all that, she got her car towed. The kid went home with his grandma, and she went to spend some quality time in a cell. I never expected her to actually heed my advice to just pull around it. But I think next time she'll probably think twice about parking in a tow-away zone. If she ever gets a license again, that is. That one was so dumb. Oh my god. She just... What? Why? What is that? That's like some entitled people type stuff. This next post is by FighterJet24. Keep screwing over your group members. This teacher is tired of your S. This is my first post here, and for reasons that will soon become obvious. This channel speaks to the depths of my soul. It's also a very long one because I want you to delight in my destruction. This particular flavour of revenge comes from the fact that everything that goes down is the result of a domino effect that leaves devastation in its wake. Dedication. This story is for anyone who has been effed over in a group project, and I certainly hope you enjoy it. Some details are deliberately vague because duh, and I don't feel like getting sued. My backstory. I've been teaching for many years, but it's important to understand that in my first year of teaching, I got put on blast by an elite group of entitled parents and their entitled kids. Not a week went by without someone either demanding my job, trying to undermine me, or even just calling me a piece of S. I nearly quit halfway through the first semester. The verbal and emotional abuse was so bad. This was at a school in a tough area, so I was accused of racism constantly for asking kids to stop talking, was ripped into for giving failing grades for missing work, and even enforcing the rules in the student/parent handbook got me in hot water. My principal reprimanded me for being a negative influence on the school, and I was told I needed to let more rules slide because he was tired of hearing from parents. I would have parents just show up unannounced to sit in on my lessons and then tell me I was an SE educator, a bad human being, etc. I have plenty of horror stories from that school alone, but the point I want to make is that this experience defined the kind of teacher I became going forward to my next school. I needed to be the person who was untouchable, because I needed to focus on the one job that mattered, teaching kids. My next school was in a fairly affluent area. It wasn't uncommon for me to find out that my students' parents made millions, which brought in its own unique set of problems. However, my new principal was super supportive of me as long as I followed the school's handbook to the letter, because by doing so, I was in line with the school's philosophy and protected by law. We seriously had parents filing frivolous lawsuits all the damn time. The school had long ago learned that caving to parent demands spilled blood in the water and brought the rest of the sharks in droves. My first year at this new school was successful for many reasons, but primarily because the school culture was easily adapted to. By planning ahead, I was able to head off 99% of all of the negative parents at the pass. The few times a parent tried to rip into me at conferences, I ripped back so hard that I developed a reputation amongst the kids and parents as someone you couldn't mess with. Everything I did was in line with the rules, and any attempt to take me down got stonewalled by my principal, who would have to say, "Mr. Fighter Jet is following school policy, so I'm afraid the ultimate decision is his." No joke, I had some parents in tears because their kid could no longer get an A in my class. I wasn't the teacher who wanted to destroy kids. I just wanted them to be accountable, and sometimes that meant letting them fail. Needless to say, this job became a lot of fun, because instead of waiting to be ambushed by parents, I could work on making my class fun for my students while still teaching them something. I made ironclad rules for the classroom that brooked little argument and would adapt the following year to make it harder for students or parents to ruin my day. I have many stories like this, but this is one of my favorites. The backstory. The year this happened, I taught a high school class with grades 9 to 12. That's 14 to 18 year olds for you overseas guests. My class wasn't necessary to graduate, but it did count as a core requirement. One of the beginning of the year rules was, I never want to hear, "When will we ever need this?" because you didn't have to sign up for this class. So fair enough. How I structure my class is that I try to make students accountable for their own actions. My class was built so that it had something to offer everybody. If you tried your best, you were guaranteed a C. If you worked really hard, you'd get a B or an A. I would bust my A to help a student with any reasonable request. The best example of this was when a student was working hard on an assignment and said, "I think I understand it now, but I can't turn it in on time." To which I answered, "Then turn it in tomorrow for full credit. This is how hard work pays off." Other than a few hard deadlines in my class, I would do whatever it took to see you learn the material. F around in my class, I've already found ways to run circles around the pathetic excuses you throw at your parents for your poor performance. It sounds callous, but I was the teacher who would stay for 90 minutes after school to help you catch up, to fix your project for another class, or even listen to you cry about your parents' divorce. If I caught you goofing in class instead of doing your work, my rule was that at least 70% of class time was intended for homework/quizzes, etc. I would warn you a couple times, email your parents, and then wait and see if they even gave an S. If they didn't, I would let you keep digging that hole until you were hip deep in water and begging for a ladder. And then, I would toss you a rope instead. You could still climb it if you tried hard enough, but a lot of kids would just cry until that hole caved in and buried them. I also utilised my school's online grading/assignment system for nearly all my assignments, which meant I could document when a student looked at the assignment, how long it took them, etc. All of this allowed me to see what my students were doing, when they did it, and also if they were plagiarising. This was one of the tools that helped me make important decisions about leniency, and also allowed me to say things at conferences such as, "Of course the test was hard. Your child didn't attempt the 9 homework assignments until 11 PM the night before the test." Being able to prove that a student wasn't lying made it impossible for the blame to be laid unfairly at my feet. It also meant the worst kids avoided my class. Bonus. However, this year, something magical happened. Every other year, I would get a wave of kids who just wanted to screw around and blame everyone else for doing poorly. At the end of the year, students would S-talk me. My class sizes would drop the following year. Then I would receive high praise from those kids, so everyone would sign up, so on and so on. But this year, not only did I receive a giant wave of knuckleheads, but they came with parents who loved to make trouble. I had already heard tales of some of those parents. Other teachers were just dying to hear stories about our interactions, because these parents were very much entitled. They would name drop lawyers when they didn't get their way, try to badger teachers into giving their kids extra credit, and would largely deny any wrongdoing on their kids' part. These were the parents who would get called in because their student was busted cheating, then accused the teacher of making the class too hard, therefore validating the student's need to cheat. So about these knuckleheads. It was a group of roughly 7 senior boys who all shifted their schedules to be in the same period with each other. The other teachers could not believe that I had all of them at the same time, but I just shrugged it off. Every week, the staff lounge was dying to know how I dealt with their shenanigans, but for the most part, I had shut down most of their S from day one. I actually got along pretty well with them, despite their constant goofing, because they had mastered the ability to appear busy and didn't distract my other kids. Then came the first group project. My class's size was just right for 7 groups of 4 to form. The Idiot Collective formed 2 groups of 4 by pulling in a kid who had been absent on the first day of the project. These 2 groups crashed and burned on this project super hard for several reasons, but the biggest were that A, they effed around during class time, and B, put off a 2-week assignment until the weekend before and then dumped all the work on everybody else, which resulted in everybody doing minimal effort. I handed out the S grades and was immediately pulled into parent conferences with several of them. One at a time, obviously. Every meeting was the same. My kid did all the work, so he doesn't deserve a bad grade. Or, my kid didn't understand the assignment, to which I handed over my hyper-specific rubric, which is a checklist for how I grade things. I never wanted to be accused of grading based on not liking a kid. These largely went like this. EP, my kid did all the work and I don't think it's fair it should hurt his grade. Me, here is the work your student handed in. Hands it over. Here is my rubric, which I printed and emailed to your student the day the project started. Hands it over. As you can see, I've itemized the grading for ease of use. I would be happy to go over the grade your student earned. EP reads through all the evidence, looks at kid. Where are the missing parts? Student, my group members were responsible for that. Me, I can't grade what I never received, so I can't reasonably just raise your kid's grade, I'm sorry. Now, good news for all my students, make assignments worth more throughout the semester, with the idea that kids who screw up early on can make it up later by working hard. I seed extra credit throughout the semester, and all of these parents are disgruntled but happy to hear that their entitled embryo can still get an A in my class. Now, the end result of these meetings was that it clearly wasn't my fault. Remember, I had all this data to prove that I made every effort to contact everybody, etc. So it must be the other kid's fault. So these parents all decide that their perfect angel is no longer allowed to work with their previous group mates. Like a cancer, this failure of friends distributes through the rest of the class. Like the genius that I am, I make my students write a group contract for every project that details who does what and when it is due. Why is this important? Because the contract provides me the documentation necessary to allow me to dismiss a bad group member and give them a 0 without their parents S-ing all over me all day. So here is where the problem begins manifesting. These seniors begin bouncing from group to group like cancerous ping pong balls, wreaking havoc. I let students choose their groups, so these seniors are desperately integrating with anybody that will have them. Because of my class side, every group has at least one coddled child to deal with, and these children just end up rotating until all of my students have worked with one of these seniors at some point. Now I am getting constant complaints from parents of other kids about these boys. Their kid wanted a good grade, which means they ended up doing all the work while their senior slacked. This is usually after the fact, at which time I bring up, I would love to yank that leech out of your grade pool, but you have to use the contract. Students don't want to say anything because they fear retribution from the seniors, but I can't do anything because I will be accused of harassment. The contract can provide me with the leverage I need to prove that these kids were doing no work, because these seniors have been playing their parents for years. I make my class utilize Google Docs because the changes are timestamped. No joke, I've had students produce all the work the morning of a parent meeting to try and lie their way out of making me look like a piece of S, but that timestamp is a godsend. Luckily, my class is balanced. An SE groupmate can make things hard, but not undoable, and parents are appeased that I have an out for their kid, but disappointed that their kid doesn't use it. Every time I announce a group project is on the way, some of these seniors sucker up to the other kids to the point that it is expected that a spot will be made for them. I'm talking buying kids lunch, bringing them gifts, etc. Seriously, the day before a group project starts, all of the seniors now sit at the separate tables from each other so that they could pull the "I'm already here, let's be in a group" card, which works most of the time. The strain on class morale is difficult, but I am biding my time. The other students are grabbing at extra credit opportunities constantly so that their grade can absorb the blow, and parent complaints are completely mitigated because I am still offering every chance for success. My principal has a copy of the syllabus in his computer so that he can quote student policies that the parents signed off on. Not uncommon for him to hear, "I don't read that S, so it doesn't apply." But he reminds them that the clause above the signature line says, "My signature denotes that I have read this document in its entirety and agree to abide by all the rules," or something similar. And that this should be a lesson to the parent and the student, that when you sign something, you should read the fine print. If you ever become a teacher, find an awesome boss like this and stick by their side. The setup. So, I have 7 slothful seniors, but I shall name the worst of these Larry, Curly, and Mo. The fallout affects all of them, but these 3 are the ones whose parents have a boner for making trouble. Every time they bully a teacher into compliance, I imagine they sit around a smoking room with cigars and cognac, laughing about how they got their way yet again with a lowly teacher. I know that anything I do will be heavily scrutinized once the grades start failing, and I need to be able to shrug it off because I have other S to do. I refuse to be the smiling topic of discussion in their celebratory circle jerk. However, a special note about Larry. Since he turned 18, his parents now travel non-stop and are impossible to reach. Larry is now just a huge douche, because his parents no longer care about what he does. I closely monitor their grades in my class, but also in others. This may sound sketchy, but I routinely do this with any of my students who struggle with the material so I can identify if the issue is my class or all of their classes. Students have been known to fake their grades using Inspect Element, and I got tired of hearing, "But they have A's in their other classes," because then I look like the piece of S. Anyways, after a check, I speak with other teachers. It isn't hard to find out that these boys are doing minimal work in the other classes. I actually discovered that Larry has been finding ways to get the other kids to do the work for him, and then disseminating it among his friends. Other teachers have been bullied into lowering test percentages in their class, and guess what? He and his friends are enrolled in these classes. Despite bombing these tests, homework and project grades give them a comfortable cushion so that most of them are floating at low Bs. I can't prove this, they're using Snapchat, but when I bring it up with their teachers, the teachers don't feel like trying to prove it and duke it out with the parents. Now, they are gaming other classes for minimal effort. However, their only recourse in my class is to keep rotating through groups and leeching off their hard work to maintain Cs and Bs, and the other kids are too nervous to utilize the group contract to get them fired. Remember how I mentioned that I steadily increase the value of my assignments to keep kids working and give them a chance to fix their grades? Me, random day in class. "Hey everybody, I was looking in the schedule and realized that your last project before finals may stress you out unnecessarily. Would anybody mind if I dropped it?" My class, tired of getting banged on group assignments. "Nope, drop it. Best teacher ever." Me, "Okay, well just so you know, I'm going to move our next project back a couple weeks and extend the deadline by a week. Also, since I cancelled the last project, this means that the next project will be worth roughly 20% of your final grade, so do your best. Screwing this up could kill your grade." My class, whatever.jpg. So in one step, I have inflated this assignment and also moved it. I sent out an email to parents and students letting them know about the change to the syllabus and the assignment. Get no responses other than happiness that I am removing stress from the end of the semester, etc. I actually did this primarily because another teacher, who was a huge douchebag, plucked down a monster project that same week, and I knew it would burn out my students prior to finals, so I figured a break was in order. Win-win for me, really. Now, why did I move it? Manicallaughter.mp4. The Friday before the project started, I announced at the start of the class, "Okay, I'm introducing the project now so that you can get into groups today and we can do it first thing Monday morning without delay, since this project is so important." The announcement elicits a room full of S-eating grins. Why? It was senior ditch day. Our school didn't condone a ditch day, so the kids tried their best to keep it a secret. But I found out a month in advance. All 7 of these kids were absent from class. which meant that I had just given the entire room freedom from these dead weights. Immediately, groups are formed, and even better, I had a couple of kids transfer out of my class at semester, which meant numbers-wise, these knuckleheads will have to work on this last group project together in 2 groups. I emphasized that everybody needed to get to class as soon as possible, so that they could start as soon as attendance was called. My original intention was to light a giant fire under all 7 of these chumps, to get them to actually put in the effort they had neglected to do all year. Most of them had grades in the low C range, except for one in the low Bs. As a bonus to all of my students, I put in an extra credit portion on this project so that they could recoup their early semester losses, but also allow these seniors to do very well if they put in the effort. This wasn't meant to be a revenge tale, but an attempt to give them one last lesson in responsibility. Before the end of the day, I sent out a parent/student notification that the project had been started, and that any ATSM students needed to contact their classmates to establish groups before Monday morning. This was important, as you'll see. I'm sure you can guess what happened next. Immediate fallout. The next Monday, the seniors come traipsing in seconds before the bell to discover that there are only 2 tables to sit at. Whatever, they take their seats. Me after attendance. Okay, everybody has a copy of the rubric, so go ahead and get started. Rest of the class immediately pulls out rubric. Seniors looking around frantically. The seniors quickly realize that they have been played and the arguing starts. First thing that happens is that Larry, Curly, and Mo decide that they now belong with whoever they happen to be sitting with and scoot their chairs over to sit with different tables. I catch this right away and tell them that the groups are already at maximum size, 4 people per group. The other 4 seniors are already fighting with each other because they know that none of them will actually do any of the work. Larry, who thinks he's God's gift to everybody, tries to sweet talk me and his group into special privileges and allowing a group of 5. Now, I see some of the other kids wavering, and I know that Larry is putting pressure on them to argue his case. I designed this project specifically for 4 people and had a job for each one, but I extended a separate offer. I will let you join, but since there are 5 of you, I expect double the work. Literally, I told them they would have to do the project twice. Larry tried to argue, but I point out the roles have been established and I inform him that if 4 people could do it once, having 5 should make it easier to do it twice. Sounds like a D move on my part, but I have now intimidated the other kids into saying hell no, and even have them put it to a vote. Unsurprisingly, Larry is the only one that votes this is a good idea, and when the other kids catch wind of my offer, they physically shoo off the other seniors trying to pull this deal as well. You'll all be delighted to hear that the rest of the period for my seniors is spent arguing who will work with who. They ended up forming 3 groups and I nod my head. Make sure they have the rubric and then wish them the best of luck. Being the smart teacher that I am, I email Curly's parents and Mo's mommy that they have chosen to work with each other. Mo's mommy shows up to argue with me all the time, but has quickly learnt that I won't take her S. At a previous meeting, she even laid into Mo and told him, I'm tired of fighting all these battles with your teachers and I'm starting to think that you're the problem, but I suspect this is for show. Curly's parents email me back and say they will make sure Curly writes a group contract. You see, Curly has sold himself as the best student ever, and clearly he will do the work and fire his classmates. Mo's mom immediately requests a meeting with me. Per school policy, I do not have to respond to an email for 48 hours. I wait until hour 47 and email a non-commissional, I would love to meet, when are you available, and wait for another response. I then wait another 48 hours to inform her of the time of following week that works for me. Now some of the other senior parents have emailed me angrily, demanding why I choose to let their kids work with the bad kids again. I had to inform them that I didn't expect all of them to be absent. Immediately, some of my seniors get burnt at home because they ditched and their parents tell me, just try to help them pass. Which I agree to. Some of them need this class for graduation after all. Mo's mom, on the other hand, shows up ready to wage war. She starts demanding that I put Mo in a different group. I decline because this project has been going on for a week and it wouldn't be fair. She demands that I add him to another group. They're all full of students and have already done the lion's share of the work. She demands that I let him work by himself with an extension. I gladly offer him an extension and slide a copy of the rubric over to him, and he goes white. At this point, he knows that he is never planning to do any of the work. In fact, I know that his group hasn't even started. I have a copy of their group project, which is hastily scribbled in pencil with no due dates on it. He starts arguing with his mum that he would rather work with his friends and that he is upset that he got stuck in this situation. Contemplating this, she accuses me of deliberately waiting until that day to screw the seniors over. After all, it was a school-sanctioned event, and I am being a jackass about it, and she'll go to the board with her story. Wrong. The joy I get from all of my prep work is shutting down bull-s like this. All 7 of the seniors hung out on ditch day at her house and told her that the principal had given them the day off. Even better, they called in and pretended to be their own parents so that it was an excused absence. He is immediately busted, and his mum flips her switch and jumps all over him. You see, she can keep pressing me on this issue, but I now have evidence that he pretended to be his own dad, and this is a suspendable offence. I buy myself into her graces by telling her that I had no idea that senior ditch day was that Friday, but I gave her kid a free extension on the homework that was due, because I thought seniors deserve their own traditions, blah blah blah. She buys it. I can also prove that I emailed him and her and gave them plenty of notice before Monday morning that they needed to pick groups before something like this happened. Obviously, once I found out about ditch day, I tried to give her precious treasure a heads up, but I don't know why he didn't take it. She makes him open his email. My email is sitting there, unopened, and I have won this battle. She thanks me and takes him home. Class morale is super high, unless you're one of the seniors. A week before the project is due, neither group has actually started, and the HMS class average is about to hit an iceberg. The project comes due. It comes as no surprise that my enterprising seniors have turned in easily some of the worst work ever. One group got into a text argument the weekend before it was due and made one of the kids do all the work. Mo and Curly are in this group. The other group with Larry has also turned in a steaming pile. I make sure to grade these 2 projects first because I know the fallout is going to be big. All the seniors dropped at least 1 letter grade. A couple dropped 2. This is 4 weeks before graduation. Larry appears to take his F- in stride. They got something like 10% on it, so I know he's plotting something. Curly's parents demand a meeting, and so does Mo's mum. Curly's parents are super upset that they got a bad grade and demanded to know why. What they didn't know is that I had already met with the student who did the entire project poorly and his parents. I informed Curly's parents that I had seen the text exchange between the seniors that pretty much ended up with, "You effing do it." Curly refused to turn over his phone to his parents for confirmation. I show them Curly's project and hand over the rubric. Mom and Dad are not happy. You see, Curly has been blaming everyone else for his mistakes since the dawn of time, and his parents have bought in completely until today. Dad pointedly asks, "Which part did you do?" And this causes Curly to spout actual tears. I then pull up a spreadsheet of all of the group project scores from the year, with no student data, and have highlighted his scores, which are among the worst. The purpose of this was to use data to prove that their son, frankly, never does the work. Curly is absolutely destroyed by this. His parents kick him out of the conference because they are tired of his excuses and ask me what they can do. I tell them I would be happy to offer one-on-one tutoring, that he could still pass the class if he does his homework and gets a B on the next exam. They agree to this, we all shake hands, and they leave. Curly's story largely ends here. He never shows up to tutoring, and I email his parents. After 3 emails, his dad finally responds with, "His mum and I have decided that he needs to learn to be an adult and are leaving him to his own devices. Thank you for your efforts. Curly will spend the rest of the semester doing little to no work because he is grounded at home. He is now just watching YouTube videos on his phone during school. The ripple effect is glorious, because now Curly is doing this in all of his classes. I speak to his teachers, and they all email that he has quit doing work in class and get the same reply I did rather than the vehement responses they are used to. When Curly fails his classes, he still graduates, but his parents have informed him that they are no longer paying for his college and it's time to get a job. Mo's mum flips her S and demands answers. Unfortunately, Mo is in the same group as Curly, and she gets the same answers from me. Strangely enough, once she's exhausted every effort and attempted to somehow blame me for this, she admits that she knew Mo was a part of bullying the lone senior and that he should be ashamed of himself. She deliberately tried to play me, but she outed herself once she knew that I knew everything. Super annoying, but I agreed to help tutor him one-on-one, which makes her happy. Long-term fallout. Mo's mom is emailing me every few days now. Is my son doing his work? Did he get help with his homework? Etc. Non-stop, but she knows better than to fight with me. Larry is unusually chipper and is no longer doing his work. I find out that Larry is supposedly going to a college where he just needs to maintain his GPA over a super low number. He claims an F in my class won't change anything, so I make sure he doesn't distract the others. Mo shows up only occasionally, but strangely enough, Larry pops in just to say hi whenever Mo is getting help. I can't fathom why he does this, but I suspect he is up to something and already have a backup plan in place. You see, Mo's mom is nuts, and I make sure that there's always another person in the room with me when I tutor him. Anyway, Mo's mom is constantly checking in. I start waiting 48 hours between emails, cause I can, and she starts dropping by in person unannounced to check up on him and me. She's been acting really cagey lately and I'm starting to suspect something. It's effing Larry. Larry is a friend of Mo's, so he's been in her home, feeding her made-up stories to convince her that I have been emotionally abusing Mo when the other students aren't around. Stuff like I was calling him an R-word after school, etc. And then telling her, you can't even have the school check the cameras to see that I'm there. This starts a whole thing where she is now demanding answers from admin. But Mr. OP is smart. Admin asks me about details regarding my interactions with Mo and I end up sitting down with my principal, Mo, and Mo's mom. She details that Mo is struggling, might not graduate, and that she believes that I have singled her kid out for abuse and wants his grade raised. You see, Mo is dumb and lazy, and his mum is just as bad. When Larry went to her with his story, she never bothered talking about it with her own son. He just agreed and went along with it. So I asked Mo point blank to please describe what has been said during our sessions and then offer to leave the room so that he can tell the principal without me there. She tells me to stay because she wants me to hear from her son what I've done to him. What neither of them knew was that I was a mentor teacher. That meant I had a first year teacher as my mentee, not a student teacher but a new hire that works with a veteran teacher to learn the ropes of our new school. And I had her working on grades such as in my room after school. You need so many contact hours on the days I agreed to meet Mo. She was young, so Mo thought she was another student and never questioned it, and couldn't even remember that she was in there. My principal already had statements from her detailing my interactions with Mo, and Mo was unable to give any actual details and suddenly forgot what had been said to him. That's crazy. Almost like it didn't happen. This lands her in hot water with admin, and she blames the whole thing on Larry and becomes visibly upset that she fell for such a stupid ruse. The result in an email cautioning teachers from being alone in a room with another student. Suddenly, after school help evaporates for both. But hey, I always have someone in my room, so whatever. After that meeting, Larry is now suddenly super concerned about his grade. I rationalized that he was hoping to burn me out of my job and then use the fallout to get a free passing grade. Obviously it doesn't work, so F Larry. I have kids who actually want to succeed. My free days are now on days I know he works, and he never shows up for tutoring anyway. Now that other teachers are hesitant to meet with him, he is unable to cut deals to raise those grades either. Seriously, teachers fell for his change of heart spiel every semester. Mo's mum makes a last-ditch effort and tries to convince me that the parents of the seniors have scheduled a meeting with my boss to have me fired for giving their kids a bad grade, and that she would be willing to put in a good word for me if I meet with her first. I'm sitting next to the principal when I get this email through an app on my cell phone, and he has no idea what she's talking about. I tell her I'd be happy to meet everybody, but that I would probably eat my lunch during a meeting, and that I hoped people didn't mind the smell of fish. I got a, "No, seriously, they are threatening to sue you," but feigned stupidity and informed her that I couldn't be sued for eating fish during a meeting. She now realizes I give 0 Fs about anything and can't be threatened. Again, there's nothing she can do because I am simply following policy. The last few weeks are frantic for these seniors. One by one they fall, because they've done little to no work for a couple of years now and they have no idea how to apply themselves. The teachers are emboldened by how hard I shut them down and finally hold them accountable. A few of them just barely manage D's in my class, the rest fail. I get a few last second squeaks of, "What can I do to raise my grade?" but have now documented that none of them attempted the extra credit assignments and that was their last chance. It's hard for a parent to S on you when you can prove you actually tried to give the student extra credit and can then prove they never opened the assignment online. The guys are now failing some of their other classes. A couple have breakdowns in my class and leave crying. Their friendships are fracturing with each other because now they all hate each other for what happened, which they will get over during the summer. My last test came and I made it an online multiple choice test. It was easy enough to have the questions and answers shuffled in random order, meaning they couldn't cheat off each other. You see, I knew for a long time that they would sit next to each other and try to cheat on the exam. Larry had blown a ton of money on a tutor and tried to carry his friends. This throws them all off, and when Mo's mum accuses me again of trying to trick her kid with a much harder test, it was easy enough to shoo her away with a simple email. Larry passes the exam, but his grade moves up to a meager D-. The results. If you're still here, congratulations on dealing with my wall of text. Here are the results. Of these 7 seniors, 1 didn't graduate and had to transfer schools. His parents were embarrassed that they paid to fly the whole family out for a graduation that he didn't get to take part in. 2 of the seniors lost all of their scholarships and could no longer attend the schools they wanted. Their fallback plan was to attend the same school together and become roommates, which they did with 3 of the other seniors including Mo. I do have some other stories because I still work at this school and occasionally hear from the kids who graduated. Larry's college was not happy with his final GPA. I'm not sure what his long game was, but it sucked. The college kicked him out before he could even start, and I found his huge web of lies extended to his parents too. He toured Europe over the summer and tried to surprise his parents by coming home instead of going to school. Apparently they kicked him out immediately after, because they were selling their house to get a condo somewhere else. Remember, they travel for work all the time, so now they wanted a downgrade. Last I heard, he made up a story that he joined the military, but got released due to a made-up illness. I say made up because I heard this tale from 3 different people, and each one was given a different disease. Curly's parents relented and decided to pay for Curly to go to college after all. Curly got kicked out halfway through the year, got busted more than once for underage consumption, and then kicked him to the curb after living at home for a year and refusing to get a job. Last I heard, he works in a vape shop. Mo went to school and used his book smarts to try and pay the other kids to do his work for him. His mum is rich. When that failed, he faked his grades to get his mum to keep footing the bill. Eventually, the school kicked him out and he moved back home. The story his mum told a friend of hers, who I ran into at a school function, was that he decided he would rather be an entrepreneur than go to college, and then he bought a drone to film weddings with. Last I heard, he was acting as a distributor for his weed dealer but had moved up to selling acid on the side. His mum thinks he's working weddings. Our senior went to college with his friends and immediately realized he needed a change. He quit hanging with his friends and, last I heard, graduated with honors in a lucrative field. He emailed me once to thank me for challenging him in high school because it prepared him for college, so that was nice. That's it, the end. Thanks for reading. And if you ever had a teacher you loved, send them an email. We love hearing from our children. Wow, that was a long one, FighterJet24. Wow. I was going to read another couple stories, but honestly this one took so long, I don't think I should, because otherwise this recording is just going to end up being like 2 hours long. So I think that's going to be it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the stories in r/ProRevenge. My name is Trey, and this was Reload Reacts, and I will see you in the next video.